Hello and welcome to Türkiye Talks. Turkey is heading to the elections. We have almost a month. On the 14th of May, presidential and parliamentary elections will be held. Kadir, welcome to Türkiye Talks. We are going to talk about the latest developments in regards to the elections. As you know, the parliamentarians lists, the candidates list now clear. And ruling party, AKP, AK Party, kicked off its election campaign. The president made the speech, and he talked about his achievements in the last 2 decades and his plans for the future. He especially mentioned about his contribution to Turkey in regards to transportation, in Turkey's international stand, and many other issues, especially in domestic politics. Did you have you looked at President's speech? What is your opinion? Have you checked the candidate lists of different parties, both the ruling party and the opposition? Because lots of debate is going on. Hot debate, we can say. What is your first impression?
Of course, Bora, it's been a very busy several weeks. It's really hard to catch up with the news in Turkey because, parties are negotiating with each other. There are, common lists, and then there are separate lists of parliamentarians heading into the elections. All parties are trying to strategize to maximize their number of MPs that they can bring into the parliament. But at the same time, they're also campaigning for the office of the presidency. Before getting to maybe AK Party's event yesterday, which was a big event, Erdogan, Erdogan is a larger than life kind of figure, and he's been a leader for more than 20 years in Turkey, just at the national level, and he was a mayor of Istanbul prior to that. So he has a very strong character. He has done many things. It's hard to list them all, of course, in a few hours. Yesterday, he did the launching campaign of his party's bid for the parliament and his own bid for the presidency. Just prior to that, perhaps we should talk about the opposition a little bit, because, in the election system, the larger parties get a bit of an advantage in terms of how many MPs they can get. And that was a debate in the opposition, because the opposition, the Nation Alliance, is composed of 6 parties, but 4 of those parties actually are very small parties, and they have maybe 1 to 2% each at most. So they were negotiating with the largest party in that coalition, which is CHP, and they had to field their candidates through the CHP lists. So that means a lot of people that, would want to vote for those 4 parties who are, well, 3 of them are more center-right and conservative parties. And now people are going to have to vote for CHP to be able to vote for those parties. So this has been a dilemma for the opposition. It's being presented by the opposition as an asset, right? Bringing all these different groups together. But at the same time, it's a problem because you only have a certain number of seats that, you need to negotiate. And, predictably, there were some criticisms from within the CHP. They said some of these leaders are former AK Party leaders. So in the election, in quite a few places, it's going to be AK Party versus former AK Party in a weird way. So the opposition has been kind of struggling with this dilemma, and that might alienate some of the opposition voters. I mean, traditional CHP voters may not want to vote for those conservative or center-right candidates. Of course, Kılıçdaroğlu, CHP's leader, his candidacy has been confirmed, and now he's trying to draw support from various segments of the country. And it's campaign season. Campaigns started, but not as in full force, I think, because of Ramadan, and perhaps next week is the Eid. After that, we are going to have a much more robust, probably, campaign season. When it comes to AK Party's launch yesterday, like you indicated, President Erdogan talked about all the achievements. I mean, Turkey has come a long way, right? When you look at exports, when you look at defense industry, when you look at overall economy, all sorts of areas in Turkey, AK Party's, the year it came to power 20 years ago and then today, there's been a drastic change. Our time won't be enough to talk about all of those. And one of the main things that President Erdogan said was, it's not a matter of promising, actually it's about delivering, right? You can make election promises, but you're going to decide who would deliver, who can deliver. And basically his promises, he has the background and the proof of 20 years that he can deliver these things. I think that was one of the major things that President Erdogan tried to convey to the voters.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially your comments about the opposition is very important, I believe, because I also noticed that there was kind of confusion because of the candidates, some anger, especially in big cities when they see former AKP, former AK Party people in the list, high in the list, in places which they can be elected. I see a lot of social media posts criticizing the party leadership, the opposition party leadership. That's interesting. Another thing which was, I think, we need to mention, there is a big difference between the platforms of the two sides. On the one hand, as you mentioned, when the president kicked off his campaign by declaring his manifesto, he focused on the projects, the things he has done, especially in the infrastructure, because he built highways all around Turkey, airports almost to every city, very big construction projects like the bridge in the Dardanelles, the Çanakkale Strait, the third bridge, we even don't mention it. He built the third bridge in Istanbul.
Istanbul airport is, I think, now the 7th busiest in the world, I think.
Yeah, and lots of projects like this. So he has based his campaign on projects. As you mentioned, the national defense industry is growing, etc. When I look at the opposition's platform, it's a little bit confusing and it's more personal. It's mainly let's get rid of this government. Enough is enough. Let's remove the president. And then when it comes to what is next, we cannot see answers like the ruling party presents. Do you think this will affect the attitude of the voters, or what kind of plus maybe I should also mention not only the two leaders, not the president and CHP leader Kılıçdaroğlu, but also another contender, Muharrem İnce. He was a candidate in 2018. He seems one of the strong challengers, especially in the opposition.
Correct. Bora, like you mentioned, President Erdogan has basically been pushing for these projects. In the past, he has called them crazy projects, and every time, there were criticisms against him by the opposition, saying that he won't be able to deliver, and he delivered. So that's one thing that is good for Erdogan. When he says we will accomplish XYZ, voters can kind of count on his past record. And then, of course, one of the major areas of focus for him was also the earthquake, right? The earthquake was of historic magnitude. There is an urgent need for reconstruction, and it has already started. And in some areas, the government has already started construction process, and he's promising to give back these houses in securely built houses within a year's time. That's extremely ambitious, but people have a hard time criticizing him about whether those can be delivered. And even the opposition, we see them saying, of course, the houses can be built. It's not a problem. But so, like you said, enough is enough. And this, they try to criticize other things. They try to talk about other things, and they try to promise things for the future that are positive things for the future. But we will see how much the voters will buy that, and whether the voters will say, will go for President Erdogan's promises or the opposition's promises, and who has the real ability to deliver them. But like you said, the opposition's you described it as confusions, and there was a lot of confusions. We've seen commentators who are really strong CHP supporters in the past, criticize their party quite a bit. And I think that kind of alienation from CHP, and then the choice of Kılıçdaroğlu himself, a lot of people didn't think he was electable. That created, and that has fueled Muharrem İnce's campaign, like you said. He's a former, CHP politician. He ran as the presidential candidate for the opposition in 2018. He didn't win. He was able to, I think, get 34% of the votes, something like that. So anyway, but he's had major issues with CHP leadership, and he left the party. He set up his own party. Now he seems to be getting a lot of traction, especially after the earthquake, because in the past he has talked about the earthquake and tried to draw attention to these issues, some of these issues, and it's resonating with younger population. But also it's resonating with protest votes, people who don't like the Kılıçdaroğlu or Erdogan choices. He's created an address for them. But this means that, if he can get something between 5 to 10% of the votes, he could force the election to the second round. In the second round, it's just going to be a presidential vote. And there, the voters will be confronted with a choice between Erdogan and Kılıçdaroğlu. It's going to be a binary choice that might help President Erdogan. And there's been a lot of criticism, attacks on Muharrem İnce because of that. They're saying, you know, he's giving an advantage to President Erdogan, but his point, I think he has a right to run, of course. The thing is, he's been saying that if the opposition actually believes that they have 55-60% of the votes, why are they worrying about him? They will win anyway. But so anyway, there's a lot of debates, lots of details about this. But Muharrem İnce's, harsh criticism of both the, ruling party, but also the opposition. We will see how much that the voters will resonate. I would assume towards the election, as we get closer, the protest votes or undecided votes, those might diminish. So there's a path that İnce's votes diminish, and then people try to go for either Erdogan or Kılıçdaroğlu. We'll see that. But İnce's votes went from 1% to something like, I don't know, 5 to 10%. It's a huge jump within a matter of months. And that happened all because of the confusion that you talked about in the opposition side. Do you think, let me ask you this, how do you think within the next month, there's only 4 weeks left to the elections, do you think the opposition will be able to overcome that feeling of confusion, or a lot, like quite a few people expect them to continue to make mistakes and continue to fight amongst each other, and by the time you get to the election, it's gonna look like a very scattered opposition that the voters may not want to take a risk and go for the opposition. While still noting that the overall, mathematically, the opposition adds up to quite a bit of votes, and they're very competitive with the ruling party's coalition. So how do you think they'll be able to bring all those disparate groups together at the end of the day?
Well, I think this confusion from the beginning was kind of deliberate because, in Turkey, people basically vote according to their identity. And because of that, in many elections, the percentages doesn't change much. So everybody has their own identity, their own party, based on their ethnicity or belief or ideology. So everybody votes for their party. So it doesn't change. That's why, in a country like Turkey, where most people are conservatives from the right wing, so it is difficult for a left-wing party to garner votes from all the parties, all the sides, all the political groups, and reach 50%. So I think from the beginning, the strategy of the opposition was to provide or create some kind of confusion of identities. That's why they are right now, CHP is trying to reach out to conservatives, Muslim voters. That's why they include former AKP, former AK Party, and former parties like Saadet. I don't know if our foreign viewers can understand, but it's more based on political Islam. So by including all these political groups, I think from the beginning, the opposition wanted to break this identity-based voting behavior by including them. But they ended up, the confusion actually hit themselves more, because there is reaction, especially in the secular voters of CHP from the left wing, they are not happy to see former AK Party members in their lists. So I think this confusion will maybe continue and maybe deeper. It may be deeper as we close to the election date. But there is a risk for the opposition because these small parties, they don't have much political backing. They are joining the elections within CHP lists. So there will be no separate lists for them, and it may cause many, conservative voters to move away from this alliance. So I think this confusion, on the one hand, was a good idea probably for the opposition to get some backing from AK Party base, but because of the confusion, because their constituency, their followers are not happy. So this identity issue, I think, will be one of the reasons of whoever wins, because it never changes. For the last 20 years, when you look CHP, it's around 20s. AK Party, after 20 years of governing, maybe you could expect a ruling party to lose some base, but still it's over 34, 35 in the opinion polls, which tells the less amount of votes for AK Party. So if you look at AK Party polls, it's over 40. So I think this is going to work not for the opposition, because they are not clear what they are talking about, what they are voting about. But the president, from the beginning, if you follow his speeches from the beginning, maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, his focus was to consolidate his base. He didn't try to get votes from the opposition side. He just wanted to keep it as it is. And I think this clear set of mind will help the government.
Well, Bora, you pointed out something that the opposition brought in center-right conservative parties into the nation alliance, so that the CHP has traditionally secularist credentials, and they've had major issues opposing the headscarf ban in a country where women cover I don't know the percentage of the women, but a lot of them. So the CHP has that background it's a baggage, it's a political baggage. Kılıçdaroğlu has been trying to let's say skillfully sort of overcome that, creating an opening, but he's also getting backlash from within the party. And then when we talk about the composition of the opposition, I think we should also remember that President Erdogan was able to bring in parties that kind of mirror the opposition's diversity in some ways. Like, the opposition is now going to get support from the Kurdish party, Kurdish Nationalist Party, HDP, but in the ruling party's coalition, you have a Kurdish party, center-right and conservative Kurdish party. In the opposition, there is, like you said, Saadet,
Erbakan's party, former
Felicity, former Arab, like the those who left the former Erbakan's party, I think. I'm trying to translate it in my head, but I couldn't. Is it Felicity, the party's name? Anyway.
Fazilet, virtue.
That's fazilet, virtue. Okay. Anyway, so again, you know, that kind of conservative party is matched against the welfare party, the new welfare party that President Erdogan was able to bring in. So in the ruling party, ruling coalition also has MHP, who is nationalist and somewhat secularist, but center-right and nationalist party. That is in the coalition. That's, you know, the good party, E party. So what I'm trying to say is that 4 or 5 parties in the opposition is presented as sort of diversity and being able to speak to all sorts of groups in Turkey. But the ruling party also ruling coalition is composed of 5 parties right now entering into the elections. So there's a bit of a mirroring images going on. Of course, because of the problems in the opposition we discussed, because of the confusions, because of the support coming from the HDP, who is, you know, seen largely as the political arm of the PKK in Turkey. Because of that, E party, the good party, voters have been alienated as well, and they are headed for İnce as a protest vote. Some from within the CHP are headed for İnce because of the things we discussed. They don't like the conservative candidates. And some young voters who would perhaps otherwise vote for CHP are also going to İnce. So it's a bit of a mixed picture. The opposition would like to say and believe that they have a common front against President Erdogan and AK Party, but that doesn't quite reflect the reality, because the coalition, the ruling coalition, is headed to elections with 4 parties that have different credentials that largely match the opposition's diversity as well. So, and then Erdogan has the advantage of saying, I've delivered, I'm going to deliver, and we are going to emerge out of the economic problems if you re-elect me. The opposition is able to, of course, their advantages, they're coming from a place where they can promise a lot of things, right? From freedoms, individual freedoms, to economic success, etc. So they don't have a lot of let's say track record of having delivered those things, but at the same time it's a promise, it's a hope, and people do follow the messages of hope, but at the end of the day, on May 12th, we'll see what happens. Maybe you mentioned actually defense issues, Bora. I mean, that's one of the major selling points for the ruling party, and ships and drones and defense industry is very robust, and the foreign policy of Türkiye has changed immensely over the past 10-20 years. Let me ask you that part, the foreign policy. Who do you think, I have my opinions, of course, but who do you think can convince the voters about sort of maintaining Türkiye's foreign policy posture and strength, regional heavyweight status?
I think the ruling party, this subject, I mean, national security, foreign policy, national security industry, I think it is one of the strongest part of the ruling party, and it is the weakest side of the opposition, because when this coup attempt took place 6-7 years ago, Turkey has transformed its military structure because of the terror activities in 2014, 15, 16. Turkey did a lot of operations across the border in Syria, in North Iraq. It's still going on. This government also launched and accepted actually the doctrine of Blue Homeland in the Eastern Mediterranean, invested a lot in national industry. I think this is the strongest part when it comes to Turkey's foreign policy. Turkey is a big player in the region. In Libya, Turkey is in the table, it's in the field. Without Turkey's support, nobody can do, they cannot move any parties. We have seen what happened in Karabakh with Turkey's support, 30 years of occupation in Karabakh, which is known as Nagorno-Karabakh in the Western world, has been liberated by Azerbaijan and Turkey. So these are really big and bold moves, which brings a lot of support to the government. I think it's the strongest part, and President Erdogan is very clear about what he wants to do. As his record on transportation, construction, this is also known by the people of Turkey. So I think he's strong in that field. And he, in his speech, when he talked about the campaign and projects in the next 5 years, he underlined this fact. And he believes that if this government goes away, these projects will stop, the national industry will halt, and the opposition reaction to this is not clear again. I mean, on the one hand, when you listen to CHP leader and candidate Kılıçdaroğlu, sometimes he is very supportive in Turkey's national security problems, but sometimes you see him together with the HDP, which is affiliated with the PKK terror group. So the HDP party declared their support to Kılıçdaroğlu. So this is, I think, the weakest point of him. When it comes to other contender, Muharrem İnce, he's more supportive to the current projects, and when you listen to his speeches on that, he is very supportive. He says, if I win, I will continue these projects. Drones are important. National industry, military industry is important. So he's actually, there is a difference between the two opposition candidates. And I think those who are not happy with a CHP leader working together with the HDP, the Kurdish party, basically, those who are not happy, those who doesn't want to vote for the president, probably their votes will go to Muharrem İnce. So I think this national security issue and foreign relations, I don't know how much it has it will have an impact on the voters, because we know most of the people vote for the economy and pockets in the money. But I think for Turks, this is an important issue. Survival of the state, this is an important issue. We have the bad experience of terror attacks in the last decade. A century ago, Turkey was occupied by foreign forces. So I think it's an important issue. And in that regard, the President Erdogan has upper hand on this. I don't know if you would agree or not.
Sure. I mean, like I was saying, in terms of foreign policy, when you look at, all these different regions around Turkey, as well as some of the global issues, Turkey has become a major actor And that has happened under President Erdogan's watch. And, you know, we don't hear much about foreign policy proposals from the opposition. That's, you know, actually we don't hear almost at all, other than sending back the Syrians. That's one of the slogans of the opposition. How it's going to happen, whether it should happen, and what timeline, and how are you going to deal with, you know, the different dynamics in Syria and northern Syria. You know, as you know, many countries are involved in that region. So we don't hear many details at all about foreign policy. And like you said, many, you know, most of the electorate cares more about economy. But for a country like Turkey that is at the heart of so many geopolitical developments, foreign policy counts a lot more than many other countries, like the United States, right? The foreign policy's impact on elections is very low. That's not true in Turkey, and that the image of a strong leader that can take the country to new heights and can protect the country in that kind of region is very important in the eyes of the voters. I know from my friends and family, you know, they do think that some of these conflicts in the region, you know, Syria, Iraq, Karabakh in the Caucasus, and you have now Crimea, Ukraine. There's a lot of conflicts in this region, and Turkish voters want to be assured that they can steer clear of them and their interests could be protected. So I think it has resonance for some voters more than many other countries. Will it be the determining factor? I don't think so. But when it comes to Syria issue, it is a critical matter. So we'll see how the voters think about that in a month's time. So, but like you said, it's on that front, it's an advantage for President Erdogan. Foreign policy credentials are strong.
Yeah, he's a brand in international politics, definitely. Yeah, we have a month to go. We'll see what will happen. Thank you very much for your comments and hope to see you next week.
Thank you too, Bora. Thanks.